All right, I'd like to start off by saying Barakateh Hawal, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one pretty much is History and the Bible. And pretty much this is a title that just came to me. I was listening to Elder Pastor's video where he was going into second Ezra, the 11th and the 12th chapter. And pretty much it's a response to Deacon Akar. And in the lesson, the apostle mentioned the apostle John and who actually put him on that island, and this is why it's important to understand the history, to understand why certain things took place in the New Testament. So I just grabbed a couple of things online, and I just wanted to kind of just go through a few points. And I was reading through this one article that I had, and like different ideas were coming. So I said, you know what, let me just throw the camera on and just go with it. So before, just bear with me 1 second. Keep an eye on this thing here. So the first thing I want to do is, what I did was I typed in online. I mean, we already knew who it was, but we do stuff for the sake of just bringing it out. But what I did was I typed in, okay, I don't have it here, so what I have to do is open up another tab. Just bear with me. And I typed in what emperor put John on the island of Patmos. And the very first thing that came up, Roman Emperor Titus Flavius Domitianus. He was one of the three of the Flavian dynasty, what they call the Flavian dynasty, which was Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian. Right? It said it was used as a place of exile for convicts, and this is what I want to explain. Also, because anything that went against like Roman authority, they considered them to be what's the word I'm looking for? There's a particular word that's in the Apocrypha, seditious. They considered them to be seditious, or to try to overthrow the empire. So anything that threatened the authority of the Roman Empire, they considered to be a threat. And what they would do is they would banish people to these islands in the Aegean Sea, which were called sporads. Now, sporads is where you get the word sporadical, spread apart. And there was actually 24 islands that were in that region where they would send the different, criminals, to. And one of the main ones was Patmos. So it says it was used as a place of exile or for convicts. This is how Apostle John came to Patmos, exiled by the Roman Emperor Titus Flavius Domitian or Domitianus in 95 AC. 95 AD was when he was sentenced to that island, and by this time the Apostle John was already an older man. So there's no record of him ever getting off of there. Now, when you do go to the history, in the history it says that prior to him, this is not in the scriptures, this is just secular history, so we don't know how accurate that is, but it said that they boiled him in oil, hot oil, and then he didn't die, so they put him on that island, to mine salt, because salt was a very big commodity back then, which is where you get the word salary from, as you hear Elder Apostle Tahar bring it out a lot. And the word salary goes back to the word sal or salt, and that's where you get the word salt from, because they used to pay you in salt back then, because salt is valuable. You have a lot of different commodities that are valuable of substance. So it says Titus exiled by the Roman Emperor Titus Flavius Domitianus in 95 AC. In Patmos, Apostle John conveyed the inhabitants to Christianity and wrote the book of Revelation, the Apocalypse. Okay? So I have another article that I was reading through, and we're going to go through this. But before I read that article, Let's go to the book of Revelation just to show you what happened to the Apostle John and the reason why he was on the island of Patmos. Because the message or the gospel that he was teaching that eventually there was going to come a ruler, a king, that was going to put down all rulerships and be set up and established as pretty much the king over everyone. So they looked at that as being seditious. This is why when Pontius Pilate examined Yahushua and he didn't find any fault in Yahushua, he wanted to let him go, and he told them, Jews back then, the Israelites, he said, look, I find in this man no fault, so I'm gonna let him go. I'm gonna let him go. And they said, no, if you let him go, then you're not Caesar's friend or something along those lines, because that was thought to be the most detrimental thing you can do, is question the authority of the Caesar, or say that the Caesar was going to be displaced or removed from that throne. So this is the reason why the Apostle John was on the island of Patmos, because he was considered to be seditious. Now, when we look up the word sedition, that's why it's good to look up your words. When you look up the word sedition, just bear with me 1 second. This app keeps on closing on me. All right, it's not working, so I'll just go the next best thing, because I got the brother to actually hook me up to the internet. We'll go to the word on Google. We'll type in the word sedition, and then we'll type in meaning. Sedition, right? It says conduct or speech inciting people to rebel against the authority of a state or monarch. See, but the Apostle John wasn't doing that. But what he was doing is he was speaking about the future kingdom that's coming, where Yahushua would sit on the throne and all nations would be subjected to him. But you did have a lot of individuals back then, during the time of the taxation and the constant, taxation and the overwhelming taxation of the Romans, because they had to keep expanding their empire, they had to keep on paying their soldiers. So what would happen is they would lay heavy taxes on the population of those that were under their rule. So you had a lot of Israelites, mainly among the zealots, that were getting tired of that Roman BS. So you would have a man or a group of men that would get together and fight against the Roman Empire. Matter of fact, let's get that real quick. Let's go to the book of Acts 5. And then what would happen was they would form a revolt, a rebellion, but that rebellion would be put out eventually. So let's go to Acts chapter 5 and verse 34. Now this is after they, were discoursing back and forth with the apostles, and when they were about to, bring the gavel down, so to speak, for lack of better words, the Pharisee Gamaliel, who was a doctor of the law, he jumped up in defense of the apostles. This is what he said. Then stood there up one in the council, a Pharisee named Gamaliel, a doctor of the law, had in reputation among all the people, and commanded to put the apostles forth a little space. Right, in other words, give them time to defend themselves. Let them, speak what they have to speak. Because, like, there's another scripture that says, right? So it says, and said unto them, you men of Israel, take heed to yourselves what you intend to do as touching these men. For before these days rose up Theudas, boasting himself to be somebody, to whom a number of men, about 400, joined themselves, who was slain, and all as many as obeyed him were scattered and brought to naught. Right. And the elder bishop Tazadakba did a whole lesson off of these individuals that actually, going back into the history of the revolt, the rebellion that they brought against the ancient Roman Empire. Just like I believe he also did one on Acts the 21st chapter, when the captain mistaken the Apostle Paul for an Egyptian that brought about, or that was a murderer at the time. Right? It says after this man rose up Judas of Galilee in the days of the taxing. So you always had among Jake, you also, even among the other nations, but among Jake we're dealing with, you always had rebellions and revolutions that were put together to fight against the Roman Empire. And in certain cases, they were winning certain battles, but due to a lot of infighting and prophecy of the Roman Empire being in power at the time, they were not able to take the Roman Empire down. Now Spartacus, with Spartacus, who was a slave, he actually got together with Croesus, I believe one of the other top guys was, and they had the gladiators that joined them, right, and slaves that joined them to fight against Rome, and they were kicking Rome's ass. But then there was infighting amongst, I believe it was Spartacus and Croesus, and eventually they split apart, and that knocked the numbers down and allowed the Romans to take them over eventually. And the reason for it, once again, prophecy. It says, after this man rose up Judas of Galilee in the days of the taxing, and that's what Jake didn't like. They didn't like that constant taxation. That's why they looked at the publicans, which were tax collectors at the time. They looked at them and viewed them, suspicious, and they hated them. They were considered to be like Sambos back then, because they were collecting taxes for the Romans. And this is where Levi, who we know in the scriptures as Matthew, was a tax collector. All right. It says, and drew away much people after him. He also perished, and all, even as many as obeyed him, were dispersed. So pretty much the point is here is that you had a lot of different rebellions, and even in the scriptures, some of those rebellions were recorded. And then you can go into the history, and you can see, these rebellions that took place, the names of the men, how many there were, and what happened to them, what began this revolt and what happened here, that goes all into the history. Just like when you research the history of 70 AD, it was due and based off of the heavy taxation, and also prophecy had to go down. So let me go, let's go back to that article before I read Revelation 1. Now, let me see what the article, okay, yeah, it was this article here. Okay, so the article is called, the page is called Greeka, like Greek with an A at the end, and then you can put in Patmos history, and this page should come up. Now, I'm going to skip the first paragraph, which just gives you mythology of, what they deem or where or who inhabited that land and so on and so forth. But the second paragraph says the island of Patmos is inhabited since 3000 BC, but the identity of its first inhabitants is still unknown. Some believe that the Cares, the Leliges, and the Pelasgos were the first settlers, while some think that the Dorians were the first inhabitants. Now, I looked up the word Pelasgos, right, because years ago, we were dealing with a lot of history on the brown-skinned people of Japheth. And an individual that fell out the truth years ago, who had a twin brother, who's elder apostle called James Tony, he did a lesson on Japheth, and he went into the people known as the Pelasgians, and those are also inhabitants of those islands. Like you had the Minoans, but then you had the Etruscans, which I believe the Etruscans were more so in what they call Europe today, on those islands. I mean, on the mainland, while the Minoans, Pelasgians, and others were the inhabitants of those different islands there. So what I did was I just looked up the word Pelasgians, because like I said, I remembered that word from what he mentioned, and it says Pelasgians. In general, Pelasgian has come to mean more broadly all the indigenous inhabitants of the Aegean Sea region and their culture. British historian Peter Green comments on it as a hold-all term for any ancient, primitive, and presumably indigenous people in the Greek world. So it covers a vast majority of people. Now you have to understand that the people that inhabited those lands prior to Esau getting in there and calling themselves Greeks or Ionians, you had the dark-skinned people of Japhet. When you go back into history, back to the scriptures, we go back to Genesis 10. Genesis 10 is what the scholars call the Table of Nations. Now, the Table of Nations is very important because after the flood, Noah, which had 3 sons, those 3 sons inhabited the known world at the time. And this is how the earth was repopulated. Right? You had Shem, Ham, and Japheth. All right. So out of those 3 boys, which became men, that's how the whole world became repopulated all over again. So all Noah himself, their wives, and the Shem, Ham, and Japheth were all brown-skinned men, so you could understand. All right. Now Genesis 10:1, it says, "Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshach, and Tyre." So these are the original inhabitants of what you know today as Europe and those different islands in the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, those are all the inhabitants of it, and they were brown-skinned people. You could do your research and look into the Etruscan people. You could do your research and look into the Picts or the pictorial people. You could do your research and look into the Minoans. You could do your research and look into the Pelasgians and some of those other names that are mentioned within this article and others, and you'll see that they were brown-skinned people. Now, when you deal with the art of the Minoans, they left a lot of paintings of themselves. You still could see them in different what's the word I'm looking for? Ruins that are still around, and certain pictures that they have taken of pictures that they left of themselves. Now, some of the pictures are brown skin, and some of the pictures look like so-called white people. And there's a reason for that. When you do your research on the history of the Minoans, the reason why you had, some that were brown and some that were so-called white looking was because in art, in Minoan art, the ones that were painted white was to distinguish which ones were men and which ones were women. The ones painted white were the women, and the regular ones that looked like your typical Polynesian person out there were painted brown skin. Because if you look at them, they both had the long hair. They kind of looked similar. They didn't have no hair on their face. So to distinguish them in art, they would paint the men brown as regular, but they would paint the women as being white, so that you can distinguish who were the men and who were the women. But for the most part, all of those different Japhetic people of Europe and of those islands, which today are the so-called Polynesians, they were all brown-skinned people. Okay? So then one of the sons of Japheth, his name was Javan. This is where you get the Hebrew word Yawan. And this is where you get the Greek word Ionian, or Ionian. When you look up, when you do research and you go back to the ancient names, that land over there was called Ionia, which is where you get the word Javan or Yawan from. Now people will say, well, that proves biblically that those people are Edomites, so-called white people. No, because when Esau came in there, they took over those lands. They conquered those lands. And that's how they were able to put themselves in there. That's how through the Macedonians, which I've done lessons on this before years ago, where you have a line of Macedonian kings that go all the way back to roughly around 800 BC or something like that, which is around the time, not too far from that, that was around the time when the Edomites revolted from under the hands of the kings of Judah. I have no proof of this. This is just, my opinion on it based off of research that I've done, that it's possible that those Macedonian kings were either all Edomites or some of them were Japhet, brown-skinned Japhites, and then through either Philip or maybe somebody before him or around that time, that's when Esau got up in there and assimilated into that culture, just like they do with many other cultures, including ours. All right, so it could either be either or. So that's how the Edomites became known as the Greeks or the Ionians, and the scriptures call them Yowan. Okay, so now let's go back to that article. All right, so we read about the Pelasgians. That was pretty much a broad term given to all of those people in there. So going back to the article, right? The island of Patmos is inhabited since 3000 BC, but the identity of it, if its first inhabitants, is still unknown. Some believe that the Caras, the Liliges, and the Pelasgos were the first settlers, while some think that the Dorians were the first inhabitants, followed by the Ionians. All right, so the Ionians are the Greeks, but you had the original Ionians, which were brown-skinned people that were living in those lands. But Esau came and pretty much took it over. Finds have been excavated, various buildings, cemeteries, fortresses, and evidence of an ancient acropolis, testifying the existence of a densely populated area in the past. During the Peloponnesian Wars, the Lacedaemonians, which were Israelites, the Lacedaemonians is where you get the Spartans from. When you go into the Apocrypha, you go to, I'm not sure if that's the GNT version, they have, instead of Lacedaemonians, they'll have Spartans written in there, because the Spartans are the Lacedaemonians. And you could do the research on that for yourself. Let me see. During the Peloponnesian Wars, the Lacedaemonians came to the island to escape from the Athenians. Ruins testify about the flourishing of the island during this period. All right, here we go. This is the main point. However, the island of Patmos declined when the Romans conquered it. All right, so they conquered those islands in the Aegean Sea, which are known as sporats, which is 24 altogether. All right, and what they would use those islands for was to banish anyone that was, brought up on charges of sedition. If they didn't kill them, crucify or chop their head off, they would banish them to those islands. All right, now I would have to do the research. I'm not sure if the island of Elba, where Napoleon Bonaparte was banished to, I'm not sure if that's part of that same region or somewhere else. I would have to do the research on that. I never thought to look that up till now, but he was actually banished to that. You could actually learn a little bit about that when you watch the movie The Count of Monte Cristo. Very good, excellent movie. And they'll give you some of that history in there. So it says it was used as a place of exile for convicts. This is how Apostle John came to Patmos, exiled by the Roman Emperor Titus Flavius Domitianus in 95 AC. In Patmos, Apostle John conveyed the inhabitants to Christianity and wrote the book of Revelation, the Apocalypse. Patmos then became a place of worshiping and pilgrimage, and actually the culture and history of Patmos are strongly connected to the Apocalypse of St. John. All right, now let's go back to the Apocrypha. Let's go to the book of Revelation, chapter 1. I'm going to start at 1. The point is around 9. But we're going to read a few of these verses. Revelation 1 and 1. The revelation of Yahushua, which the Most High gave unto him, to show unto his servants things which must surely come to pass. This was what was given to the Apostle John. The English word is revelation, or to peel back the veil. When you look it up in Spanish, it's Apocalipsis, where you get the word apocalypse from, which means exactly the same thing, to pull back the veil. It says, and he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John, who bear record of the word of the Most High, which is Yahushua, and of the testimony of Yahushua, and of all things that he saw. Blessed is he that readeth, and they that hear the words of this prophecy, and keep those things that are written, which are written therein, for the time is at hand. Right, including not taking the MOTB, which is the micro C-hip. What you still have, you still have so-called teachers of Israel out there that are teaching against the MOTB being the micro C-hip. And this whole system that you see coming online, including the brain C hip. Now, in China, they're starting a trial of brain C hips. They say that's going to rival Elon Musk's, Neuralink. So everything in society is going in that direction. The first model for a social credit system it came from China. And they had an interview with this one Moabite dude, and pretty much he was a well-to-do individual, but he did something that they didn't like, whether it was a political view or an opinion or whatever it was, and they shut him out of the whole grid to where he couldn't take public transportation, he couldn't work, he couldn't do certain things, he couldn't do any online banking, he couldn't do any buying, nothing, because they shut him out of the grid. And this is why Esau wants everything to go online, because they want to shut people out the grid to make them conform to their micro C, so that they can have total control over people. All right, and we've done many lessons on that. Inside joke with the many. John to the 7 churches which are in Asia, right? That's all that whole region. Which today they call it, part of that they call it in the Middle East, but it's really Asia. But it's going to be hard to convince people that it's not called the Middle East, because we're so used to calling it the Middle East, just like everybody's used to saying Uncle Tom was a bad guy, and they call you, if you were a sellout, they call you Uncle Tom, which Uncle Tom was a good guy. It was really Sambo that was a bad guy, but everybody's still going to say Uncle Tom because this is what people are used to, So it says, and peace, grace be unto you, and peace from him which is, and which was, and which is to come, and from the 7 spirits which are before his throne, and from Yahushua HaMashiach, who is the faithful witness and the first begotten of the dead, and the prince of the kings of the earth. See? So by him saying that he's a prince of the kings of the earth, which implies a prince is what? A prince is the next in line to become king. So by saying something like that, that would be in direct conflict with the ruling class at the time, which was the Roman Empire. Their Caesars, their government, the way everything was established. The apostles and them were saying that the Lord Yahushua is coming back, which he is, to take all rule down and subject all nations under him. So that was considered a very seditious act. So you could either be crucified, your head chopped off, or you can be banished to one of these islands. And that's what happened to the Apostle John. It says that from Yahushua, who was a faithful witness, and the first begotten of the dead, and the prince of the kings of the earth, unto him that loved us and washed us from our sins in his own blood, and hath made us kings and priests unto the power and his Father. To him be glory and dominion forever and ever. So be true. Behold, he cometh with clouds, and this is how Yahushua is coming back with the chariots of heaven, and every eye shall see him. And that means every eye shall see him. Just like he mentioned, as the lightning cometh from the east and shineth unto the west, or something along those lines, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Meaning it's going to be, known. It's going to be obvious. Okay? It says, behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierce him, which shows that, just on this one verse alone, shows that, matter of fact, just that one little piece, and they also which pierce him are going to see him in this time. Why? Because of reincarnation. Not that they're 2,000 years old or so, but because they are here again. You keep coming back in the reincarnation over and over again. Every, maybe, let's say 75 to 100 years or so, depending on how the Lord does it, it's every 3-4 generations. Right? It says, and all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him, even so be true. Because the world is not expecting Yahushua to come back in the fashion that he's coming back in. And for the most part, even going down to today, the average person out there, the younger generation, they're not even into the scriptures like that. They're into reason, they're into technology, their whole mindset is changed, and their whole mindset is put off by religion, because it's not the book that has the problem, it's the teachings that are being pushed out here through Christianity and other religions that create the problem. The book is not at fault. The book is not flawed. It's the people and their mindset and the things that they've been taught that's really effing people up. So it goes on to say, I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the ending, saith the Lord, which is and which was and which is to come, the Almighty. Now here goes the point, verse 9. I, John, who also am your brother and companion in tribulation, and in the kingdom and patience of Yahushua HaMashiach, was in the isle that is called Patmos, for the word of the Most High, and for the testimony of Yahushua. So he was considered to be seditious. This is why the Apostle Paul said not to resist the powers that be. Now, if the orders or the laws of Esau go against the Lord Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, then we don't do that. But if it's not in direct conflict with the scriptures, then we obey. We obey the rulers that be, because they were put there for a reason. And the Lord and the Apostle Paul said that, you know, that the rulers are not a threat to good works or something along those lines. But you had a lot of, and the reason why I said that too, because you had a lot of Israelites back then that were in direct revolt and sedition against the Roman Empire, trying to take it down physically. And you can't take them down physically because the Lord established them. He said he puts up one and then puts down another, or something along those lines. He rules in the kingdom of men. He setteth up one and takes down another. You know? It says, for the word of the Most High and for the testimony of Yahushua. Let's look up real quick. Let's see. Let's go to the blue letter. I just want to, because I looked this up earlier. Let's go to Revelation chapter 1. And let me see what we got here. Okay. Chapter 1 and verse 9. And let's go to the word Patmos. And everything that you see us do, you could do yourself. Go to the, to the definition of words, go to the Greek, to the Hebrew, and like we always tell you, we give you warning. When you go to the Blue Letter Bible, the Blue Letter Bible goes off sometimes. They're on point on a lot of stuff. It's a very good, study reference tool, but they go off. And this is why you have to know what you're looking for, so that you won't get caught out there. So the word Patmos means my killing. I don't know if that's a true etymology of it or not. It says a rugged and bare island in the Aegean Sea. Let's see what we got. It says Patmos, a small and rocky island in the Aegean Sea, reckoned as one of the sporats, right? And they give you different sources from Pliny and Strabos and Thucydides. Now called Patino, or chiefly in the Middle Ages, Halson, Palmosa, and having from 4,000 to 5,000 Christian inhabitants. They give you another source, or other sources. Let's see. Have some. Looks like some German writing. Under the word in it, John, the author of the Apocalypse, says the revelations were made to him of the approaching consummation of the Most High's kingdom. And this is why he said that's the reason why he was on the island. Because the speech that he was given and the teachings that he was given was in direct conflict with the Roman Empire, so it was considered to be seditious. All right, that's why he was on that island. It says Revelation 1:9, it has been held by the church ever since the time of Justin Martyr. Give you some more references or sources. And it goes into some other stuff. So pretty much I said that's the only time, according to this, that the word Patmos appears in Scripture. All right, so let's see what else we got. Sporats, right? Because that's what those islands are, 24. are an archipelago along the east coast of Greece, which an archipelago pretty much is, or archipelago is pretty much a group of islands clustered together, right? It says along the east coast of Greece, northeast of the island of Euboea. Let's see. I'm just trying to see if I can glean anything off of that. Let me just type in Patmos, and then we pretty much can close out, because the point in the lesson was, who actually, put the Apostle John on the island of Patmos. And we found out that it was Domitianus, as they call him, and it was pretty much around 95 AD, which they say AC. Okay, see Patmos. Patmos, an Aegean island in the north of Greece, of Greece's Dodecanese island group, is a significant Christian pilgrimage site. Its cave of the Apocalypse is where John of Patmos, and that's where it ends right there. It says, what is Patmos called today? Patmos is known internationally as Jerusalem of the Aegean, or the island of the Apocalypse. And I believe they said it's called Patino nowadays. It says that the population of Patmos as up to date is 2,998. So about 3,000 people. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So this was just a history lesson. The Bible and history, I believe I called it, or history in the Bible, and pretty much it's just to show you, that you have certain secular people that are connected with the scriptures. All right, so I just wanted to do a little lesson on that to kind of give you like a little history lesson, and you could look stuff up on the map so you could get familiar of where it is, because the Aegean Sea is right in the region of what's called the Mediterranean Sea, So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. Till the next time I say, Shalom.